Hey, this is Andrew and welcome to the One Very Ordinary Man channel. We're going to go through our bathroom renovation. Main point of this thing is this live edge slab piece that we put in, something I cut on the sawmill a while back. And so for those of you that have watched regularly, you've seen me work on this thing. And then we did tiling, we did a backsplash along here, added some accessories, new toity, and a little bit of this tile stuff along here and so on. Anyway, we're just rookies doing this, but I think you may find this maybe a little bit inspiring, hopefully, and not too hard. If we can do it, you can do it, right? Without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, here we go. I have these two live edge slabs. I planed them a bit and boom, taking the clamps off, the glue up here. There we go. There they come off. The next thing is cleaning out the cracks. Got to make sure all that dirt and grime is out of there so the epoxy will stick onto the wood. I also took a wire brush in here as well. I have no problem admitting that I'm a fan of power tools. Now here I'm cutting off the back edge. I got to make this thing squeeze through that 25-inch planer. Well, that's what you call a snug fit, using every inch of that planer, but that's the way to go for sure to flatten this thing out. And once I have it plain, I'm going to take and cut off the ends a bit, getting closer to where the final width is going to be, and also define where the sink will be, just roughly, so I know where to put my bow ties here. This was really the first time that I had done bow ties, so not perfect. I did use a rockler jig to cut them out and then finish the corners off with a chisel. Putting the glue in here, and you know, everything's a learning experience at this point. After the bow ties, I just sent it back through the planer to flatten everything out, and that actually worked fairly well. Now getting at it with the multi-tool to cut some pieces out of the old countertop, because we don't care about that. And this way we can do the backsplash and still have our sink for the next couple of weeks. Worked pretty good. Not going to talk too much about tiling because we're not experts at it. Anyway, here I'm doing a kind of a test fit of the slab, putting it in. Haven't quite cut it down. Here I'm marking the edge because the wall was slightly bowed, so we actually got to follow this mark and try to cut it out to the shape to get it to fit in as closely as possible. So I want to keep the slab flat over time. I'm just going to put a couple of angle irons on the underside here. You can see I'm putting a threaded insert down in the slab, 3 of them going across, and then we're screwing these angle irons down. Doing the epoxy pour is always the fun part, of course, and this one was no different. Had some frustrations because although I did seal it first, there was some bubbles that came up in the corner, so I had to do something, you know, a little different to try and repair the corner, and I ended up putting this black stripe across it. It's kind of odd, but whatever. And now we're getting at it with a sander again after the top was put on. You know, those epoxy tops are very shiny, and what I found on this top here is they're shiny, but they have a little bit of a very slight, I don't know what the term is, a ripple in it. So we started out sanding at about 1,000 grit, and it worked all the way up to 7,000 grit, doing some wet sanding. The top really turned out nice, and it lost that glossy shine. Yeah, here you can see I'm putting snow on it because I don't have water and there's snow outside. So we're going to do the wet sanding here at like 7,000 grit. Really pleased with how this turned out. It doesn't really have so much of the epoxy look after doing this, but it still looks absolutely beautiful. And just taking some 50 grit and getting rid of these drips on the bottom.
50 grit.
Yep, 50 grit. As I said before, we're not tiling experts, but here I am putting down some thin set, and then we're going to take and lay down a piece of tile here. So skipped a couple steps there, I guess, while we laid down some of that other tile around the toilet. You can see I used a sour cream container to kind of jam down in the toilet pipe and seal that so it didn't gas us out for a few days. And here we're pretty much done with the tiling, except for the trim around the base that we're going to do. Looking pretty good. Haven't even pulled the spacers out yet or grouted. All right, so now we have the edges on, and one trick for that would be make the edges shorter if you're going on walls that are not particularly flat. It would just make it a lot easier. Now here my wife is filling in the cracks with grout, and then after she does this, she will get at it with a sponge and kind of clean things off and smooth them. And you know, like I said, we're not tiling experts, so there's other videos to go look at for this. When we installed the toilet, we actually put a small bead of adhesive around the bottom just to hold it down a little bit more firmly and make sure it doesn't rock. I think that's going to work out great. Well, it's that time. Out with the sink. Yeah, I gotta let the water drain out a little bit, and then it's out with the old countertop. Never to return. And finally, I'm bringing in the new countertop. I've cut it to fit according to those marks that I made earlier, and I have those little tabs on there that I put on. And when the old countertop came off, there was some plywood shims underneath there because the old countertop is actually kind of thin in the middle, and this one here is a little bit thicker. So yeah, we're going to see if everything fits together and get it screwed on here. Now on to some accessorizing. This just a simple oak board with some hooks on it for a towel hanger. And if I didn't tell you before, I'll tell you now. I hate these cheap little screws. Okay, coming to the end of this short video here. We added some trim on the underside of the live edge slab to neaten things up a bit, and put some new trim around the doors, caulking around the live edge slab and the floor and all the cracks and whatnot, just to keep everything nice and clean. New light switches. Oh, look at that ugly guy right there. And so with that, I'll say goodbye, and please do rate and subscribe. Thanks.